The room was alive with laughter, glasses clinking, and the hum of expensive conversations. It was my fiance's big office party, a night she had been looking forward to for weeks. Everyone was dressed to impress, their suits tailored, their dresses shimmering under the golden lights. I stood by her side, smiling politely, doing my best to blend into her world. But deep down, I knew I didn't belong. These were corporate elites, people who measured success in six-figure salaries and luxury cars. And me, I had built my career with my own hands, literally. I wasn't a lawyer, a banker, or a CEO. I was just a man who worked hard, loved what he did, and believed that respect wasn't tied to a job title. At first, the party felt normal. I met some of her colleagues, shook hands, and answered the usual small talk questions. But then, the jokes started. Subtle at first, hidden behind fake smiles. A coworker smirked and asked, "So, you really do that for a living?" I caught the glance he threw at my fiancée, like he was expecting her to laugh along. She didn't correct him. She didn't defend me. Instead, she smiled and shrugged, as if my career was something to be embarrassed about. That's when I felt the first crack in my chest, but I let it slide. Maybe I misread the moment. Then, as more drinks flowed and the conversations got bolder, she took it even further. Standing in the middle of her polished, high-status friends, she looked right at me and, with a playful chuckle, said, "Oh, come on, you know my fiancé isn't exactly on our level." The room erupted in laughter, a deep, gut-wrenching sound that clawed at my pride. I stared at her, hoping, praying that she would take it back, that she would realize what she had just done. But she didn't. She just sipped her wine, completely oblivious to the damage she had caused. Something inside me snapped. The woman I had planned to spend my life with had just humiliated me in front of a room full of strangers, treating my hard work like it was a joke. My entire life I had believed that love was about support, about standing beside each other no matter what. But at that moment, it became painfully clear. She never saw me as an equal. I was just someone convenient, someone good enough until she was in a room where status mattered. I could have stayed silent. I could have laughed it off like she expected me to. But I wasn't going to be anyone's punchline. If she wanted to make a joke out of me, I was going to give her something unforgettable, something that would make her wish she had never opened her mouth. So in front of everyone, with the entire room watching, I took a deep breath, looked her dead in the eyes, and said something that changed everything. The room went quiet. The laughter that had once filled the air now hung awkwardly between us. My fiancée's smile froze on her face, like she wasn't sure if I was about to play along or turn this night into something she'd regret. I could feel the weight of every eye in the room, waiting to see what I would do next. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about the woman standing in front of me, the woman I had trusted, the woman I had loved enough to build a future with. And in that moment, I realized I didn't really know her at all. I took a slow sip of my drink, letting the silence stretch. Then, with a calmness that even surprised me, I said, "You know, it's funny. I always thought we were partners, that we were in this together. But tonight, I see it clearly. You don't respect me. You never did." My voice was steady, but inside, my chest burned. She blinked, her expression shifting from amusement to something else, something uneasy. "Oh, come on," she said, forcing out a laugh, trying to brush it off. "It was just a joke." "A joke?" I repeated, tilting my head slightly. "That's what you call tearing down the man who's supposed to be your future husband? In front of your friends?" I looked around, making sure everyone heard me. Some of them shuffled uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Others leaned in, curious to see where this was going. She let out a breath, annoyed now. "You're overreacting. I was just playing around." That was it, the final confirmation. She didn't feel bad. She didn't even think she had done anything wrong. And that's when I knew. This engagement was over. But I wasn't going to just walk away quietly. No, I had something much better in mind. She was still staring at me, waiting for me to let it go, to laugh along like nothing had happened. But I wasn't that kind of man. I had spent years building my career from the ground up, working long hours, sacrificing sleep, putting everything I had into my work. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. It gave me purpose. And now the woman I had planned to marry had reduced it to nothing more than a punchline. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of how this would look in front of her colleagues. Her perfect image was cracking, and for the first time, she was realizing I wasn't the fool she thought I was. I glanced at the people around us. Some were whispering, pretending not to listen, but I knew better. They were all waiting to see if I would just swallow my pride and move on. I set my glass down and took a step closer to her, lowering my voice just enough so only she could hear. "You think this is funny? Watching me stand here while you mock me like I'm beneath you?" She crossed her arms, her confidence slipping. "I didn't mean it like that." "But you did." I held her gaze. "You meant every word." A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. For the first time I saw it, the tiniest crack in her arrogance. But she wasn't the only one who had misjudged someone tonight. She thought I was going to walk away embarrassed. She had no idea that before this night was over, I was going to make sure she was the one who never forgot it. She shifted uncomfortably, her polished confidence cracking just a little more. The room was still watching, waiting for me to either back down or explode. But I wasn't going to do either. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to do something far worse. I was going to expose the truth. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "You know, I've spent so much time believing we were a team, that no matter what, we had each other's backs." I let the words hang in the air, making sure she felt the weight of them. "But tonight, I finally understand. You never saw me as your equal. You saw me as temporary, someone to fill the space until something better came along." Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly masked it with irritation. "You're being dramatic," she muttered, shooting a glance at her coworkers, silently begging them not to take this seriously. I smiled, calm, collected. "Am I?" I turned, addressing the crowd now. "You know, I always thought respect was something that didn't need to be earned in a relationship. That love meant standing beside someone, not looking down on them." I let my gaze sweep over her coworkers, making sure they all heard me. "But I guess I was wrong." She stiffened, her fingers gripping her wine glass. I could tell she was panicking now. She had spent years curating this perfect image, making sure everyone saw her as flawless, powerful, untouchable. And here I was, tearing it all down with nothing but the truth. I took one last look at her, at the woman I had once loved. Then I reached into my pocket, feeling the weight of the engagement ring. It was time to end this, and I was going to do it in a way she'd never forget. The weight of the engagement ring pressed against my palm, cool and solid, a reminder of everything I had once believed in. My fiancée's face was carefully composed, but I could see the cracks forming beneath the surface. Her eyes darted around the room, silently pleading for this moment to pass, for me to laugh it off and let her walk away with her reputation intact. But I wasn't going to make it that easy for her, not after tonight. I let the silence stretch, watching as she shifted uncomfortably. The confidence she had worn so effortlessly at the start of the night was gone. Her co-workers, once amused by her jokes, now avoided her gaze. Some looked embarrassed for her. Others just looked intrigued, waiting to see how this would end. Taking a deep breath, I finally spoke. "You know, I always thought love was about respect," I said, my voice even. "That no matter what job I had, no matter how much money I made, it wouldn't matter because we were in this together." I turned the ring over in my fingers, the symbol of our future that now felt like a cruel joke. But I see now that I was wrong. Because to you, love is a game where status and image mean more than the person standing beside you. Her lips parted slightly, as if she was about to protest, but no words came. She knew there was nothing she could say to fix this. Not here, not now. I took a step closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "The sad part? I actually believed you loved me." I let that sink in before pulling back, holding up the ring for just a moment longer. Then with one last glance around the room, I placed it on the table between us. The small metallic sound as it touched the glass surface felt deafening in the quiet room. She inhaled sharply, her fingers twitching slightly, but she didn't move. She just stood there, frozen, as the reality of what was happening finally hit her. I straightened, shoving my hands into my pockets. "You always wanted to impress these people," I said, nodding toward her coworkers. Well, I hope it was worth it. Then without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving behind the woman who had just lost something far more valuable than she'd ever realized. I walked out of that room without looking back, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders with every step. The murmurs behind me grew louder, the tension thick enough to choke on. But I didn't care. I had nothing left to prove, nothing left to fight for. The woman I had once imagined spending my life with had shown me exactly who she was. And for the first time, I truly saw her. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, I took a deep breath, letting it all sink in. The engagement, the future plans, the love I thought we had, it was all over. And yet, I felt a strange sense of peace. No regrets, no second guessing. Just the undeniable truth that I had walked away from something that was never real in the first place. Then, just as I reached my car, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, half expecting her to be there, ready with some excuse, some desperate attempt to salvage what she had destroyed. But it wasn't her. It was one of her coworkers, a man I barely knew. He hesitated for a moment before speaking. Hey, I just wanted to say, that was something back there. He glanced toward the building, shaking his head. Honestly, a lot of us saw the way she treated you, but no one ever called her out on it. Guess we were all too afraid to. I raised an eyebrow, surprised. Afraid? He let out a dry laugh. She's great at keeping up appearances. But the second someone doesn't fit her perfect image, she makes sure they know it. He exhaled, looking almost relieved. You did the right thing, man. You deserve better. I nodded, appreciating the words more than I expected. Thanks. As he walked away, I pulled out my phone, scrolling through old messages, old memories that suddenly felt like they belonged to someone else. That's when I saw it, an email notification at the top of my screen, a job offer, one I had applied for months ago, at a company I had always dreamed of working for. My chest tightened as I opened it, scanning the words over and over. I had gotten the job, a new beginning, a fresh start. I couldn't help but smile. She had spent the night mocking my career, tearing me down in front of her world. But in the end, she was the one who had lost everything. And I had just won in a way she would never see coming. I stood there for a moment, staring at the screen, letting the reality of it sink in. It felt surreal. The same night my fiancé had tried to tear me down, the universe had handed me something greater than I had ever expected. Maybe life had a way of balancing itself out. Maybe walking away from the wrong person was exactly what I needed to step into the right future. A breeze moved through the quiet parking lot, and for the first time in a long while I felt free. No more walking on eggshells. No more trying to prove my worth to someone who had never truly valued me. I had spent years believing love meant sacrificing, compromising, bending until you nearly broke. But now I saw it differently. Love should never come at the cost of self-respect. As I got into my car, I couldn't help but think about her. Was she still inside, pretending nothing had happened? Was she trying to spin the story to save face, acting like I was the one who had ruined the night? It didn't matter anymore. Whatever she told herself, whatever she told others, it wouldn't change the truth. I had walked away with my dignity intact. She had lost something far more valuable than just a fiancé. She had lost the person who had once loved her unconditionally. The drive home felt different, lighter. I rolled down the window, letting the night air fill the space around me. My mind raced with possibilities. A new job, a fresh start, a chance to rebuild without someone constantly making me feel like I wasn't enough. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to see her regret it. I had already won by choosing myself. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed with a message. I glanced at it, recognizing her name. For a second, I considered reading it. Maybe it was an apology. Maybe it was an attempt to undo what had already been done. But instead, I locked my screen and set my phone aside. Some doors weren't meant to be reopened. I stepped out of the car and took a deep breath. This was the start of something new. And for the first time in a long time, I was ready for whatever came next.